we'll move on to consent calendar. All items are considered routine to implement an earlier council action and or may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested. So I can say on item G, I just have a question and a comment, but it doesn't need to be pulled. It can be taken as one motion. Are there any items that council wants to have pulled for a specific separate vote?
To the chair?
Yes.
I would like to ask a question on 5C.
T, got it. Anything else from council on questions? And then or anything to be removed for a separate vote?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to acknowledge the work that was done on item E.
E, got it. All right.
And I think it would be good to let the audience know about I, in case they're not following the agenda. I think it's there's enough interest to kind of explain how we move forward with that.
Okay. I've got C, E, G, I for questions or comments, but not separate action item. Okay, let's go down the list. Let's go first to item C. Accept reconciliation of general ledger to bank reports and investment reports dated April 20th, 2020. Michael.
So the question here is, it's related to the investment report, and a question went out just asking about the balances in those investment accounts and whether or not those funds are already allocated, if the funds are basically, do we have a lot of cash sitting in the bank somewhere that could be used for other purposes? I think I know the answer on this, but we didn't get a definitive answer from staff. So if and I don't want a detailed analysis really about which funds are in which of these accounts, but just a very high level answer about whether we could expect that the balances that we see in these investment accounts are reflected elsewhere in our budget and committed to in very specific ways. That very simple, are those funds committed?
Director DeMartini.
Through the chair, thank you. Honorable members of the City Council, Keith DeMartini, your Finance Director. Staff has provided a detailed response to that question on the attachment to the budget staff report. It's question number 12, but I'd be happy to provide a verbal answer as well. And so the summary of that is the city's investment program, the investment portfolio is made up of the cash balances of about 40 individual funds on the city's financial statements. That includes cash in the city's general fund, our enterprise funds such as water and wastewater. The cash in there comes from utility bill payers. It also includes cash in various grants that the city receives or other restricted revenue sources. So to put it simply, that cash is to be invested per the city's investment policy, but the money cannot be spent unless it is an authorized legal use of that funding. So for example, the money that the water and wastewater utility bill payers pay is to be spent on the ongoing operations of the water and wastewater enterprises, as well as the capital improvements. The money in those funds cannot be spent, for example, to pay for police and fire department staff. There are specific purposes and uses for many of those funds. Really the only way that some cities do that is through an interfund transfer or interfund loan policy, but the implementation of that is not a municipal best practice, and it causes some other challenges. And so it's not staff's recommendation to do anything like that anytime soon. And staff really needs to be careful about how those funds are to be spent.
Okay, and thank you, and I apologize that I missed that in the report, so I didn't mean to be redundant.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move, unless there's anything on that item.
Well, yeah, to the chair, thank you for asking that question too, and Keith's detailed response a little bit better than trying to look at that report, so thank you.
Marty, did you, no? Marty, did you have your hand up on this topic?
Not any longer, that was it.
Thank you. Let's move on to consent item E, adopt resolution accepting the transit corridor pedestrian connection improvement Phase 2 project as complete, authorizing the filing of notice of completion with San Mateo County Recorder's Office and authorizing release of the construction contract retention in the amount of $34,474. Marty.
Right. That's. I pulled that again to acknowledge that things are getting done. Things are expensive, and the great news for this project is it was done under budget, and the money was returned back to the grant funding source of I think it was Measure A. And we just if we could have something really short from staff, just highlights. That's all.
Director
It was a
Tan.
good job.
Sure. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Just a brief information on this project. This project is, it was performed or completed to increase the pedestrian safety by enhancing crossing intersections along San Bruno Avenue. There are several things that were done as part of this project. We installed 10 curb extension, which is like bulb outs at the 3 intersections. We also installed accessible curb ramps, and as well as the rectangular flashing beacon system at the intersections of San Bruno Avenue and Easton. There was some storm drain catch basin that had to be relocated as well as part of this because of the installation of these curb ramps, but those were completed. The total cost for this project came out to be about $689,000. The city received grants, 2 grants. One was from Safe Routes to Transit in the amount of $500,000, and the other is the San Mateo County Transportation Authority in the amount of $350,000. So a total of $850,000 in grant funding for this project. And we had spent, again, only $689,000 for the construction contract. So there's about $23,000 grant fund remaining that will be returned, and then the $75,000 that we requested initially as part of the construction phase from Measure A will not be used and will be returned back to the Measure A fund. So all in all, it was a great project, and a lot of good improvements that were done for our residents, and we ended up coming in under budget as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Director. Any other comments from council? If not, I'm going to move on to item G. Approve a 1-year extension to the agreement with the County of San Mateo for animal control services ending on June 30th, 2021, and authorize the city manager to execute the amendment. This is to the city manager, and it was just very quick. I do understand it's a 1-year extension, but a lot of times, from my time here, it's always about what we pay as a community and the service we receive. And I know it's not like there's a lot of folks in town and the contract's coming up, but if you can just hit on that, please, a little bit.
Yes. So San Mateo contracts with Peninsula Humane Society for animal control services in a collaborative county-wide contract with all of the 20 cities and the county participating in that contract. PHS has had that contract for quite a while, since 1952. There has been an effort to put that contract out to bid and to look at the specific terms in that contract. There is a team assembled of a number of city managers that are working with the county. I serve on that team that has 5 city managers and representatives from the county looking into the contract. We were actively working on this as well as the RFP, and then COVID-19 hit. And so the decision was to do a 1-year extension of the animal services contract to release the RFP in the following fiscal year. And so this is the amendment that is before the city for a 1-year extension. Our share of the county-wide contract, that is just over $6.6 million, is 5.41%. And our estimated payment for next fiscal year is $371,000 for animal care services. And that is before the City Council for action tonight and will be submitted to San Mateo County and be approved by San Mateo County. That is the contracting entity for the contract.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from or comments from colleagues? If not, I'm going to move on to I. Oh, Linda.
Yeah, just so when in reading it, I actually thought that it was more of a single source contract, so I didn't question the time. Can you just, I mean, are there a lot of companies out there that do this? Just curious.
So there are not a lot of vendors out there that provide animal services. There may be others that bid on the contract. There may be groups that come together to form an entity that will bid, and they will have to, if they're successful, take over the contract. But no, the Humane Society is one of the largest operators of animal shelters. But other agencies run their own animal shelters. You have individual cities that run animal shelters, or cities that come together and run a joint facility. In this county, since 1952, it has been a collaborative effort countywide, but there has been one sole provider, and that is PHS. But because of the length of that contract, it is a best practice to put contracts out for bid, even if there may be a one bidder. And so the county and various cities have been undergoing that process. But we're delayed because of COVID-19, and this is a one-year extension with a commitment that the county will put out a contract. There was also a outside study done by a consulting firm last year looking into animal services citywide that had a number of recommendations for improvement. Some of those recommendations were actually a part of the agreement, this one-year extension. Others will need to wait for a successor contract.
Okay, and then just I guess a follow-up to Mayor Medina's question. How often are we using the service? And I guess my last question would be, with COVID-19, are the animal care workers coming out? Because if not, will we make sure we get a discount on the one-year extension for the months that we're in the shelter in place?
So there are annual reports that come out, and I can forward those to council. I do not have them available right now. There are per animal charges, as well as requirements that if we call for service, there are required response times. And so there are also credit backs to the cities if PHS serves non-county animals, which sometimes they do take in rescues. And so that cost is a portion to their philanthropic efforts, and there is a credit back to the cities for those activities. But I think the best way to answer your question, because there's a whole host of data and metrics, is to provide council with that annual report, and we will locate the latest annual report and send it back out.
Okay.
And the second part of the question around COVID-19?
I do not have information on their activities or enhanced activities around COVID-19, but we can follow up and ask that question.
Okay. Any other? I'm going to move on to I. Authorize fireworks stand permits for 2020 upon finding that the nonprofit organizations meet requirements of Resolution 2008-67, 2009-46, and ordinance numbers 1700 and 1840. And then I would say, Marty, if you can kind of quantify what information, then we'll figure out if it goes to police, fire, city clerk, or whoever.
Sure, no problem. Basically, just making sure the public is aware that safe and sane fireworks will be sold in San Bruno this year.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
And then we will get a report. I'm like we normally do, leading up to before the 4th of July, and we'll hear about that more later. Just that I wanted to just make sure that everybody was aware of it because the various service clubs are anxious, but it's going to be we have to do things differently with COVID-19.
Yeah, social distance, you're correct. City of Pacifica is also doing their fireworks, as well as City of San Bruno. The applications were submitted. There was a deadline. I believe it's 14 and been reviewed. So, okay, with that said, is there any action on the consent?
Through the chair,
Yes.
I move that we approve the entirety of the consent calendar items.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Mason,
Aye.
Councilmember Medina,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar,
Aye.
Mayor Medina.
Aye. Now we'll move
Motion
on.
carries.
Thank you.